in one of the worst Arizona State losses, not just this season, not just this decade, but in the entire history of the program. The Sun Devils fall to Utah today 55-3. Nick Borgia of Devil's Digest, alongside our publisher Hode Urbino. And Hode, we've thought we've seen it all with this team, but it just seems like they find new ways to write history in the wrong ways.
Yeah, I think we all knew it was going to be a very challenging contest coming into Salt Lake City, and we talked about it in our preview, Nick, that this is a Utah team that's not only physically tough but mentally tough, and they needed a bounce-back game in the worst way. Unfortunately for the Sun Devils, they were exactly the remedy that the Utah needed after a lopsided loss at home the week before to Oregon. But I don't think any of us thought it was going to be this bad of a loss. But when head coach Kenny Dillingham talks about Utah being the standard that he wants to establish in Tempe, this is one of many examples of how a program needs to respond from a very what a loss would be demoralizing, I should say, for a lot of other programs. Utah bounces back like nobody's business. I mean, sure, it helps that this is a game that takes place here at Rice-Eccles Stadium rather than on the road. This is I think 80th sellout for the program, dating all the way back to 2010. So this is a program that is definitely used to bouncing back and really responding to adversity. Arizona State is a program that's trying to learn that, especially with a massive roster turnover, a first-year head coaching staff. So, if there's any ray of light, no pun intended over, Nick, here we're doing a post-game in the daytime. I can't think of the last time I actually did one of these pieces when the sun hasn't set yet. So I would say that not only from a beat writer perspective, but from a team perspective, if you're going to have a loss like this, might as well have a noon, 11 a.m. Arizona time kickoff. But aside from that, really not a whole lot of positives to take from this game.
Much needed for us, for sure, Hode. But let's talk about what happened on the field today. We'll start with the offense. Trenton Bourguet going down earlier in the game. I mean, this is a team that had scored 38 points last week against Washington State, and we talked about in our preview that Utah is going to be a tough defense for that same offense to handle, but just injuries upon injuries. We even saw Cameron Scadaboo throw some passes today. It just seems like we saw everything and nothing was working for ASU today.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the first quarter, and the ASU defense really got punched in the mouth, giving up a touchdown on the first two drive by the Utes. And maybe in some respects, as an Arizona State observer fan, you're not really too concerned about that because that kind of what happened against Washington State the week before. And it almost seems like sometimes this ASU defense maybe needs to get punched in the mouth in the first couple drives, but then they settle down very, 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 very quickly and play very well the rest of the game. But like you said, quarterback Trenton Bourguet goes down. I think it was the third play of the game, and everything unraveled from there. And this is on top, as you mentioned, injuries on top of injuries. That's been really the calling card for the Sun Devils. Running back to Carlos Brooks was not dressed. He had a torn hamstring. Kenny Dillingham said after the game. We knew that left tackle, I should say starting left tackle, Isaiah Glass, did not even make the trip because of an ankle injury he suffered in the Friday walkthrough. So now we got a true freshman, left tackle Sean Na, which really did as much as he could against an absolute ridiculously talented defensive line for the Utes, headed by Jonah Ellis, one of the best defensive ends in all of college football, let alone the Pac-12. So there was just one challenge after another that Arizona State had to conquer. And when it really comes to the offense, Jacob Conover, really did as best as he can. Like I said, Cam Scadaboo, who Dillingham said is actually the fifth string quarterback on this team, in case anybody's keeping the depth chart notes. Did actually throw some passes. I think he was the victim of a pretty questionable call of a pass completion he had for 42 yards to Troy O'Meary that was called for offensive pass interference. Let's say I've seen many more egregious penalties than that one. On special teams, it wasn't a bad game. Elijah Badger had, I think, a 78-yard kickoff return. But the offense, again, without Bourguet, stalled, only had to settle for a field goal. Then you had on special teams Melquan Stalvo, a 75-yard punt return for a touchdown. Holding penalty for Arizona State, calls it back. So for a team that really hasn't had any margin of error, it seems like from week one, just to have all those little plays go against them, and the injuries just mounting on the offense. 83 yards of total offense. I don't think I really need to really describe any more stats on this side of the ball when it comes to how bad this Arizona State offense did. Kenny Dillingham, plain and simple, said that if offensively you can't do anything, that is just one hurdle that Arizona State can't even partially overcome, let alone totally overcome, especially not against a stout Utah defense who came into this game ranked 18th in the country. And I'm sure that after this game, they might see a top 10 ranking.
And the number that jumps out at you off of the box score today is obviously 55 points for Utah. This is against an ASU defense that has been the shining point of the season so far. But, we could say it's hard, or it's maybe unfair to assess the defense when they're on the field for what feels like the entire game. But still, 55 points to not even a top 3 offense that they've seen all season long. And it was really interesting to see what happened to the ASU defense out there.
Yeah, I think there was some snowball effect slash domino effect going, and this defense, let's face it, I don't want to put it all on the offense anytime the defense doesn't have a good game, but when the lack of offensive support for this defense has been a running theme, and that's putting it kindly. And I think today it reached a crescendo or a valley, however you want to look at it, having only 83 yards of total offense. This is a defense, Nick, that was on the field for 77 plays. And trust me, if Utah really wanted to put the pedal to the metal, that number could have been easily 85 or 90 plays. You had a significant injury to edge player Prince Dorba, the leading sacker, on this team. So that's another injury that Arizona State could absolutely ill afford and not able to overcome. Kenny Dillingham said after the game that there's 2 things you need to do to even have a chance of winning a game. That's blocking and tackling. So obviously the blocking on the offensive side for Arizona State was really non-existent, just because the rushing game was never able to kicking into a average gear, let alone above average gear. And this is a running game that, if you recall, against the 2 Washington schools, really able to find its stride. But when you play a Utah defense, especially in that front 7, that's just a whole different stratosphere of defense, and you're just running into a buzzsaw. But back to the ASU defense, there really were a lot of missed tackles, and this is a Utah offense not only with just classic run plays, but it's really any play they run on offense. If the defense on the other side of the ball gives them just a little crease, they don't exploit it. They exploit it to the max. We saw explosive play after another. Some of them actually going for touchdowns. And at the end of the game, and I know Utah scores with 8 seconds left. And I really like the fact that both defensive backs Shamari Simmons and Jordan Clark said after the game, "Look, we're not mad at Utah, quote unquote, running up the score. If we want to stop somebody, we need to stop somebody. And if they're going to score on us, whether it's 8 seconds left in the game or 8 minutes in the game, that's on us as a defense. That's not on the opponent." But you really just had a lot of backup, seldom used players that hopefully gained some really valuable experience that they can take forward, not only for this year but for 2024, 2025, if they're still here on the team. But yeah, it's like you said, Nick, it's really hard to judge the defense by this game because there were just so many things that just unraveled really, really quickly. And again, not to sound like a broken record, that lack of support from the offense is absolutely going to do in any defense, including that of Arizona State.
So you talked about the tackling and the blocking that Kenny Dillingham had mentioned in his post-game press conference being a major focal point for this team heading into this week of practice as they prepare for UCLA. But, what else do you see on the to-do list for this team after such a demoralizing loss today?
I'll tell you, it's when you have a game like this, Nick, it's always like that fine line. Okay, are you really going to study this game film or just burn it? Because I don't know how much you really can glean from this game. Kenny Dillingham said, and I know maybe some are going to think it is a controversial statement, which I don't think it is. It says that we did not get worse after this game or during this game, and I think there's something to it. It's just a matter of ASU not making plays, and maybe they got away with it quite a bit against Washington State just because of caliber opponent. To some extent, got away with it against Washington the week before. But a team against a team like Utah, every mistake that you're going to make, blocking, tackling, whatever the case may be, you're not going to only pay, you're going to pay dearly, and that's why the scoreboard looks the way it is. Jordan Clark said that he's going to work himself to exhaustion to get better for this upcoming game against UCLA, and I think that as one of the leaders of the team, if he can just really have all his teammates buy in, and there's no reason to think why they cannot buy in after a loss like this, just to really work harder. Sure, you also need to work smarter ultimately. I mean, having 5-hour practices, not that's allowed anyway, is really not going to be the panacea for all of Arizona State's issues right now. But to really just make sure that the mistakes that were committed today are not going to be committed, next week. You and I talked that it's not only just a challenging schedule the rest of the month of November, especially on the defensive side. This ASU offense, who is hurting, pun intended, right now. We don't know, how healthy they're going to be when they face UCLA a week from today in the Rose Bowl. And just to give you guys perspective, Utah's defense was 18th in the country coming into this game. UCLA coming into today, I mean, yes, they have a road game in Tucson. We'll see how they fare there. They were ranked number 10 in the country. This is not getting easier for the ASU offense. I mean, sure, getting healthy, you would say, is the number one thing on the to-do list, but they just really need to get back to what they did against Washington State. And I would say even going back to games like Colorado and Cal, where they really showed flashes. But another thing that we mentioned in our preview, Nick, as much as you want to show progress, and this ASU offense was feeling good about themselves, scoring 38 points against Washington State just last Saturday, sometimes you just have teams that you just can't build momentum, or further momentum, I should say. You can't show that the progress that you made last week is something really tangible. And Utah, unfortunately, is really one of those programs that can really stop your progress, stop your momentum, and UCLA is definitely capable of doing that, especially on defense. So, Utah used this game against ASU as a bounce back. Let's see if ASU can use a road game, a very challenging road game in the Rose Bowl against the Bruins as a bounce back too. But Canadian Lang said that this team does not have a quit even today. People are going to look at the scoreboard and roll their eyes when I say this. Didn't have quit either. They just did not make the necessary plays. And again, against a team like Utah, you're paying dearly for that.
All right, Hode. Well, thank you so much for your insight, as always, for continuous coverage of the Arizona State football team and the basketball team. Basketball season getting started here pretty soon. Keep it locked in at DevilsDigest.com and drop a follow at DevilsDigest on Twitter. For Hode Urbino, my name is Nick Borgia. We appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you next time.